So today we're going to be looking at how to work with the Python console in Lesson 2a variables. The Python console is a component of PyCharm that allows us to essentially execute small bits of code directly in the Python language instead of having to create a Python file and then turn around and execute that file. So it's a neat little useful tool for trying and testing things out, and in this case creating some variables, changing their values, and those types of things. So the first thing we need to do is we need to go to the bottom left corner of PyCharm, and we're going to click on Python console. When we click on that, you may notice that you'll get these three angle brackets here. If you move and scroll up just a little bit, there's actually some text here, but it's not displayed. So one of the first things we want to do is actually resize this to make it a little bit easier to use. So we're just going to drag it up by clicking and dragging on this horizontal divider right here. You'll notice that the mouse turns into a double-sided arrow in order to do that, and we'll see that it's starting this dev console and gives us some other information. And then on the left side we'll have this area where we can enter commands. On the right side you'll see special variables, and currently there's nothing in there, but we're getting ready to change that. So this three angle brackets that you see, or if you want to think of them as greater than signs, whatever is easiest for you to remember, will allow us to enter in a single Python command. So for example, we want to declare and instantiate the variable x. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to type in x equals 2. And you'll notice that you do get a little bit of color coding in this. This is one of the nice features of an IDE, is having all these things in one place. If I hit enter, you'll see that over here on this right side in the pane where it says variables, that we have x equals int 2. And so we'll talk a little bit later about data types, but our variable there is 2, so we can see what it is. If we wanted to print that out to the console, we can type in the command print x, and we hit enter, and you'll see that right below it, it prints the value 2. So we created or declared and then initialized, gave an initial value to the variable x, that is 2. So those are two of the kind of four main components that we have discussed so far. We declared and we initialized. We actually even called the variable, which is when we printed x. It said go and find the variable x and give me back its value. So when I say print x, it doesn't print the letter x, it prints the value of that variable. So again, it's kind of nice to think of variables as containers. They allow us to store things and then access them or change them. So in this case now, we're going to modify the x variable to a different value. The way that we do that is through what's called assignment. Okay, an assignment is basically changing that value using an equal sign. So I'm going to say x equals 3. What I'm doing now is I'm saying that variable container now is pointing to the value 3. So instead of it being 2, it will now be 3. This might seem a tad odd to you, especially if you're used to math. May seem a little backwards, but the way that assignment works is that you have the variable name, which is x, followed by the equal sign, and then the new value that you want it to be. So we're going to type in x equals 3 and hit enter. You'll notice that now up in our variables pane we have x equals 3. Now let's say if we can access it again by printing out x, and we can verify that it is indeed 3. That is the new value of the variable x. What if we want to create a different variable? Let's say y. Y equals 1. We type that in, we hit enter. We'll now see that there are two variables, x and y. X has a value of 3, y has a value of 1. If I want to print y, I can do that, and we see that the value of 1 is printed out. Now, this is very simple to create a variable. Let's say that we wanted to create a variable with a specific name, because when we're doing programming, we always want to make sure that our variable names have meaning to them, have some certain value to them that is easy for us to understand what they are. So let's say that I was doing an app where I was calculating the speed of a car, right? So one variable I might create is mph, for miles per hour, and I might start out with a value of 0. I hit enter, and now I have a variable mph. So variable names don't have to be a single letter. Obviously, we'd run out of variables very quickly if that was the case. And they can be abbreviations like this. They cannot have periods or slashes or special characters in them. It's typically also considered a good idea to do what's called camel case notation. So let's see an example of that. Let's say that I was making an app that contained a inventory list, and one of those things in that inventory was cookies. This is for a restaurant, let's say. Then I could create a value called number and then cookies equals 100, let's say. You'll notice that number is all lowercase, and the first letter in C, cookies, is uppercase. That is known as camel case notation, and that is a common programming practice across a number of different languages. Again, I'm declaring the variable number cookies, and I'm instantiating it or initializing it with a value of 100. So I hit enter, and you'll now see that I have miles per hour, number of cookies, X and Y are all in this Python console. I can then go and continue to manipulate them, which we'll learn about later on in the lesson. So that's the basics of using Python console to create variables by declaring them and giving them initial values or initialization, and then calling them and assigning them new values.